Hello and welcome to this tutorial. Today we are going to talk about the Graph4D in Unity. Occasionally, you may need to make interactive narratives where you would like to trigger specific 4DS sequences at particular instances. This is often useful when you are developing a training program or a video game. Different sequences might need to be played based on user choices, interactions, or in-app events. This interaction can be initiated by the user or triggered by events within the project itself. To facilitate such dynamic scenarios, we have developed a Graph4D. Here is an example of a graph that we are going to use in our tutorial. The order in which the sequences will be read is defined by the graph. User inputs can also be bound to play a given sequence by defining triggers in the graph and doing some simple C# scripting. Graph4D also follows for looping sequences. Before you begin shooting, it is really important to plan your graph. The entire scenario and the sequence's order should be thoroughly thought out to consider the necessary connections between sequences. In our example, let's take a scenario with a game. A non-player character greets the player, then asks them what they would like to choose between their left and right hands. The NPC waits for the player's response. If the right hand is chosen, he says bravo. If not, he will ask the player to try again. Within your scene, place a number of 4DS prefabs equivalent to the total sequences required for your project. We start by renaming our 4DS meshes, which will help us identify them better when we organize the Graph4D. In Asset, create a streaming asset folder. Import your sequences. For each sequence, drag and drop your 4DS file from your Streaming Assets folder to the assigned sequence name. For each sequence, untick Play and Start. This is an essential step, since we'd like our Graph4D to be responsible for the playback and not the Unity Play button. Then, create an empty object and drag and drop the Graph4D script that you find in the script section. Open your Graph4D. Right-click to add a node. Initially, we set up the first sequence, which is where our character is introducing the game. After saving and testing the setup, the sequence plays and the game ends.
Hi, let's play a game. Choose between my left and right hands.
Next, we add an output, such as the scene where the NPC waits for the player's choice. Since we don't require any user input to initiate the next sequence, we leave the trigger empty, allowing the sequences to link directly.
Hi, let's play a game. Choose between my left and right hands.
However, you can see here that the linking isn't very smooth. To improve this, you can add a transition between those two sequences. We will create a new short sequence which would smoothly go from the last frame of the first sequence to the first frame of the second sequence. To do this, we added a puppet and a morphing in 4DFX. Placing this resolves the issue, resulting in smoother sequence transition.
Choose between my left and right hands.
The NPC is waiting for the player's decision, offering two possible choices. To allow the player ample time to perform an action, we enable the loop option for this sequence. If no choice is made, the sequence will continue to loop until a decision is made.
Choose between my left and right hands.
We also add a transition made in 4DFX to make the loop smooth.
Choose between my left and right hands.
Then, we'd like the player to enter 1 to launch the first sequence, and 2 to launch the second sequence. In this case, we create 2 nodes, each of them representing a possible sequence outcome. Within each of these nodes, we specify the corresponding sequences. In the trigger field, we assign keywords that will be used in a script later on. We assign left to trigger the choice leading to the left end being opened, and right for the sequence involving the right end. We add the transitions. After saving these configurations, the setup is complete. Create a new C# script. Let's call it Trigger Manager. In this script, we will code the interactions between your scene and the sequence playback by using the keyboard's input to trigger specific sequences. First, add in the script using Unity 4D to use the 4D Views plugin. We add a public member, Graph4D, which will refer to the Graph4D component in our scene. We call it _graph. Next, you'll need to check each frame to detect if a trigger has been used by the player. We achieve this by using the void update function. In this function, assign the keyboard's input you want to the triggers we define in the graph editor, left and right. Once the trigger is enabled, the Graph4D will branch off on this path and reset the trigger. Save, quit. The last step is to create a new empty object that you can call Trigger Manager. Insert your Trigger Manager script and indicate in the field Graph the graph that you want to play. Save and play your sequence. Press 1 to see what the first end is hiding, 2 to see what the right end is hiding.
Hi, let's play a game. Choose between my left and right hands. Wow, you're so good at this! Here's what you won! Oh no! I'm sorry, try again!
With Graph4D, it's also possible to make more advanced scenarios, with several choices. Please refer to the documentation provided with our Unity plugin on the Creators platform.